I narrowly escaped being the next victim of two infamous serial killers, never knowing what their true intent was that night. When I was in my early 20s, my date and I decided to go to the Sail Inn in West Sacramento to play pool. We'd been there before and enjoyed speaking with the bartender. I can't recall her name, but she was a beautiful, engaging woman. This particular night, we walked in and noticed the pool table was occupied. There was a man and woman shooting a game, so my date bought us some drinks while I watched. After a few minutes, the man noticed me and struck up a conversation. When my date came over with our drinks, the man asked if we wanted to shoot a game with them. It didn't occur to me at the time that his female companion hadn't said anything yet. We agreed, so we racked up the balls and we played against them. During the game, we introduced ourselves, and soon after, the man began asking me some personal questions that started to bother me, like where I lived, how long my date and I had been dating, and whether we lived together. I noticed the man and his companion kept exchanging glances. I became increasingly uncomfortable, even though the rest of the conversation was casual and pleasant. Strangely, the woman still hadn't spoken. When the game ended, the man asked if we wanted to leave with them, to go to another bar down the street. At first, I didn't respond. He repeated the invitation, saying they discovered a cool spot not far from where we were. My date and I looked at each other, and before he could say anything, I blurted out, "No thanks, we have dinner plans." We didn't actually have plans, but my date didn't argue. I think he noticed the panic on my face. We grabbed our jackets and got out of there as fast as we could. By the time we walked out the door, the hair was literally standing up on the back of my neck. When we got back to my truck, my date asked me what was wrong. I told him I had a terrible feeling about those people and just knew we had to get away from them. I pointed out how strange it was that the man invited us to leave without consulting his companion first. My date shrugged it off, thinking I was overreacting. A few days later, I opened the afternoon paper and read an article about a woman from West Sacramento who'd been found murdered. I didn't think much of it until I saw the photo accompanying the article, the bartender from the Sail Inn. Apparently, she'd been kidnapped, raped, and murdered on the very night we were there. I was completely creeped out and saddened by her tragic death, but it wasn't until about a month later that I realized just how close I had come to danger. A man and a woman had been arrested for the bartender's murder, along with several other murders, including 4 couples. When I saw the front page of the Sacramento Bee, my heart nearly stopped. There were the faces of the killers, Gerald and Charlene Gallego, the same couple who had invited my date and me to join them that night. This was one of their methods, to lure victims into their van. As I read the article, my chest tightened. Not only had we narrowly escaped being their next victims, but our refusal to leave with them might have caused them to target the bartender instead. Although I know intellectually it's not my fault, I've always felt a mix of relief and guilt. I've often wondered how different the world might have been if she had lived her life, even if it meant I wouldn't have lived mine. Needless to say, that was the end of my bar date experiences for a very, very long time. I later found out Charlene Gallego had been paroled and was living in Sacramento under an assumed name. Apparently, she was performing charity work to make amends for her past. Gerald Gallego, however, died in prison before his execution. While I know he got what he deserved, I'm conflicted about Charlene's freedom. On the stand, she claimed she'd been manipulated and controlled by Gerald, which may explain her silence that night. I'd love to have a private conversation with her someday.
Sometimes trusting your instincts can mean the difference between life and death.